every year, container ships are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and this is causing a lot of trouble, the Suez Canal and stuff. But with all this container ships getting bigger and bigger, there's a reason for it, and that they can actually they're more fuel efficient. The bigger something is, the more fuel efficient it is because it can it has less friction compared to area volume, like a square. Kind of, if you think about a square with a cube, its volume goes up with s square cubed, but its surface area goes up with 6s squared, and that's friction. Also, you can make more efficient engines, and that's due to all the plumbing reasons I discussed before. Small pipes have more friction and turbulence, and there's also more friction with bigger gear. There's less friction with bigger gears because there's less surface area exposed with each of the gears. You can burn stuff more efficiently in big things if you're burning fuel. Electric generation with the batteries can become more efficient because of heat stuff. Batteries is not as big of a deal because you have also bigger ones need more heat problems and stuff like that. But it's still some stuff like that going on. You need to have less control instruments for the same size. Saves weight, but also saves expense and money. Less of a crew, and a bunch of other things. So bigger is better for many reasons, including with energy efficiency. And you can also make the whole thing go slower and not have a fantasy. If something twice as big and it goes twice the speed, 2 times slower, it saves a lot of energy, but gives the same amount of products as one ship that's twice as fast and half the size. And they're also more stable at sea, and waves don't make a big deal, which actually makes them more energy efficient, but also safer, theoretically. However, the problem with is that many ports can't handle bigger ships because they're too shallow, or other problems, or the infrastructure where the ships fill in or get outquakes. And now I've discussed it, ports don't, every individual vendor of big ships doesn't have a mode to do it because they just are playing chicken and waiting for the other person to invest in it, or themselves not to invest in it, instead of the cities playing catch up and stuff, dredging the ports or making the ports bigger in different ways, because they eventually know they'll give up on it and do it for the money, and that costs a lot of money. However, I want to talk about an alternative idea I have to this, and that is, instead, what if the ship unloaded somewhere offshore onto smaller ships that then went into here, and they could go to small ports across the nation. So this is where my bigger ship comes. It goes to tiny little ships that can fit in small ports all over the place. Now, this would mean this would have a bunch of advantages. So one big advantage is that it would have less infrastructure you have to keep creating to keep it in place, and the town and stuff, the city would have to do this less planning. And also you would have to, not only would you have to have less new infrastructure with it, you can also have less, not only do you don't need to have one big airport or other things nearby, you can all be dispersed more easily. Another thing is it's a huge saving environment because we're already killing so many coral reefs and kelp beds and stuff because we're taking sand and from the coast is a lot more shallow and has these nice sand beds which might have coral, kelp, or anything, and we're taking that, digging it out of, and dumping it somewhere else. Where we're dumping it kills the life there because we're dumping on top of it. Then we're taking this and destroying the habitats at the same time, and that also uses up a ton of energy and fossil fuels. So even though these ships are more environmentally friendly, creating a place for them is horrible. And then beyond that, if we could use bigger ships without causing this destruction, they'll be more efficient and it will save a lot of problems there. So huge environmental saving there. You could have less stops. So you could have one ship that unloads it onto the other ship while it's moving. So that whole ship can keep going and never has to stop. Which every time it stops, it has to restart and everything. And restarting takes a lot of energy, actually, and stopping. Stopping and starting is when something takes the most energy to move. And you could also have it have less service and maintenance that way. Another thing that is that it would also allow for stuff to get closer to its final destination, which would save a lot of energy. Going back to this picture, if it unloads here, both of these things are closer to these two imaginary cities I drew over here. And because they're closer than here, on land you would spend a lot less energy. And land is where you waste the most energy. Land travel is a couple 100% less efficient energy-wise than sea travel because of just all the friction and weight you have to support. Water is buoyant and you just slide over the surface. So you have that. Oh yeah, and also with stopping and stuff, I forgot to mention, oftentimes in infrastructure, you need tugboats for the bigger ships because they can't actually do those fine turns on their own power easily. This could get rid of a lot of tugboats to save energy and get infrastructure because tugboats will have to go in and out more times and park and rearrange themselves and adding extra mass and stuff to port instead of its own thing. Because you're not only pulling the boat, you're pulling the tugboat and all these other things in navigation. When this one, you can have a slow turning boat more. It lets you develop better technologies because now you can develop bigger ships, but also you have a chance to look at the smaller ships that are not as expensive to make, that go in between, and develop those to be better. You spread less species because you have boats not traveling as far inland and from two inland places where they can spread exotic species from ballast water and stuff, causing invasive species. The mid-ocean has more of the similar species than the inland close to coastal shelves, but it's shallow because the shallow things are more cut off. And then, beyond all that, I forgot to say, is that it could allow for more local infrastructure to develop at different port cities, which could help more local economies and also make stuff more local and more efficient and better. So more new economies, that way would be good. So these are just some of my ideas. But how would we do this? Well, we're starting to develop robot cranes and robot pickers that can work just as well as human hands, and sometimes better. And there's a scary thing if other commonplace warehouse jobs and stuff. But if we can make a really strong one, this will be a perfect case for this, where they could do it. For human beings are not fast enough, in my opinion, to do this. And it also would be a very dangerous job for human beings. If something goes wrong, they'll get crushed. And just not a lot of room for error and stuff like that. Where a robot, if it's programmed, can do this simple thing a million times, the same thing, but it has to be programmed well. And programmed well is really hard. But I think it's totally possible. You also have to figure out how to keep the whole ship balanced. So either that means you have a boat that has very good balance, and you could do that with having one, but you could have that with a boat that has platoons on either side that could extend, or something that could extend. And those platoons, I don't know if platoons are actually the right word, or something like one of those boats, catamarans, I think they're called. But just things that extend to the side or in that could make it more or less balanced. Which also now you can put on the bigger ships to balance them better in the water so they have less friction. which you couldn't do before because then you can't fit in the port. But like this, one here, center bolt, outer, and these things can extend very far or go back in. Or you could have a design where you load it in a certain way so it never's off balance, like you load it first in the middle. Or you could have it where you make it more stable using active things with the motor stabilizing it, which could use a lot of energy, so I don't like it as much as the other two possibilities. Or you can do some combination. I mean, a combination of all three of these would be very, very efficient and could handle all sorts of weights. The problem with the camelins is it would get less close, so you'd have to load it maybe more from the front, and it will have to go up like this. Another way would be to extend actually something below the water to stabilize it, which is done by some vessels, already research vessels that actually almost turn 9 degrees and extend part of them below, because stuff with very thick, heavy things below are very, very stable. Because it's like a pendulum that has to swing so much to unstabilize. And when it swings up here, this mass below has to swing all the way up here. These are just some ideas I have for making a better transportation system for local things. Not for local things, for delivering stuff across the sea, which is now one of the most efficient energy-wise ways of delivering stuff. And also price-wise, not necessarily environmentally friendly because of all the other environmental destructions they do. Well, thank you very much for listening. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. And also leave a comment behind if you have any questions, ideas, comments, or anything for future videos. Thank you very much. Goodbye.